Welcome. I'm Paul Wessel. I'm the Executive Director of the Green Building Council. I'm joined today by David Peterson, the EV Regional Manager of Marketing and Sales Strategy for Nissan North America. Our goal today is to share with you an opportunity about how to ramp up DC fast charging for electric vehicles. I have a few introductory remarks. David will fill us in on Nissan's offering here, and then we want to open up to your comments and thoughts. So just to make sure that you're muted, if you're not David or me, please press *6 to mute your phone. We will unmute you when David wraps up. Our presentation should be about 10 or 15 minutes. We're recording this session for others to view, and we'll send you the link afterwards. So electric vehicles are gaining traction. Edmunds reports that over 40 new electric vehicles will be in the marketplace by 2015. And the Green Parking Council has recognized the value of cleaner electric vehicles in our Green Garage certification program. As Bloomberg shows here, the electric vehicle battery prices are dropping and will continue to drop over the near future. Hold on. And while over the long haul, projections are very clear that electric vehicles will become a significant means of transportation, how quickly this all happens depends on growing the public charging infrastructure, particularly for fast charging, which essentially recharges your battery in 30 minutes versus the hours it typically takes with level 2 electric vehicle charging. A research project with Japanese drivers found why DC fast charging was important. When drivers knew that this rapid charging was available, they lost their range anxiety and drove much further than before. The right-hand side of the slide indicates how much further they were willing to drive than previously. And they were far more comfortable letting their needle drop below half a tank because they knew they could rapidly refuel. The funny thing about this is that they didn't even refuel that much more often, but the availability of fast charging allowed them the confidence to drive farther. So DC fast charging has been expanding in Europe. This is a map I took off the web just a few minutes ago, actually, from a company called DCT CEV, and it's their units across Europe. And through the GPC's network of property owners, parking operators, technology companies, and planners, some of whom are pictured here, and Nissan's strong partnership today, we want to talk with you about how we can ramp up DC fast charging infrastructure in the U.S. Just so you know, registered for our presentation today are major commercial building owners in the U.S., parking operators, planners, local officials, clean city leaders, and many more. What collectively we can do here, really we hope can be a game changer. And with that, I hope to turn this over to David, if David was able to log in. David, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Great.
So I'd like to first preface my presentation by mentioning that Nissan just recently joined the Green Parking Council, and we're very excited to be a member. Electric vehicles and the Nissan Leaf have really been they've really opened up a whole world of opportunity for us. And we're involved in many aspects of the EV ecosystem, which is really what led us to join the Green Parking Council. And the opportunity to interact with its various members in parking and real estate, and specifically, the sustainability mindset that the Green Parking Council is advocating for, not just in words, but with action as well, which is really what this is all about today. It's really actionable things that you can do with regards to DC fast charging. And I think Paul did a great job of explaining what DC fast charging is. It's basically fast charging for electric vehicles, and with the Nissan Leaf, it's about 6 to 7 times faster than level 2 charging, which charges the Nissan Leaf in about 4 hours from 0 to full. And why the focus on DC fast charging? This is really core to our strategy going forward. To date, we have about, well, a little bit over 330 DC fast chargers throughout the United States, and that's not counting any Tesla superchargers. And we really see DC fast charging as being critical to eliminating range anxiety, and we've sort of put our own spin on that and called that building range confidence. But rapid refueling is really what's going to enable people to drive electric vehicles in the Nissan Leaf comfortably. There's so much unpredictability in many cases in our travel behavior that in order to truly embrace electric vehicles in the Nissan Leaf, you need to know that you have the assurance to refuel rapidly. And in fact, we anticipate this becoming the default behavior for charging going forward. So with that, I'd like to move forward in the slides. To the next slide, please. So what we've decided to do is partner with the Green Parking Council and bring an exclusive program for its members. And this is basically a program where we'd like to work with members on specific projects. And so we will evaluate each opportunity on its own merits. But basically, we want to be able to identify what kind of support is necessary to make DC fast charging projects a reality. So we're bringing funding and we're bringing hardware equipment, usually in the form of donations. And so the reason why I'm being a little bit vague here is because there's so much variability in the type of equipment we can provide and the amount of funding necessary to realize projects. But what's critical to note here is this funding and ability to support projects with hardware expires March 31st. So what that means is we need chargers installed by March 31st. So it's a very short term, and this is really driven by our fiscal year, and we're currently finalizing budget allocations for our final quarter. We're right now in the middle of our third quarter. So this is why the short deadline and the necessity to express interest by this Friday. So with Paul and the Green Parking Council, we've identified the following markets that you see here: Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego, New York, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Boston, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, the Seattle-Tacoma area, Dallas-Fort Worth, Atlanta, and Houston. So those markets are where we will focus the majority of our attention. But other markets may be considered. So if you don't have an opportunity that falls into these geographic areas, we would certainly consider supporting in another market. So the next slide, please. So I think we understand why DC fast charging, but we're really looking at areas such as commercial, workplace, and residential areas. With commercial and workplace, with commercial it's really about retail. With workplace, it can be any size. It can be a campus. It can be community of employers. And with residential, it's really about apartments and condos, kind of high-density residential. Single-family residences typically have access to level 2 charging or home-based charging, so it's less of an issue, but it can be a challenge to install level 2 charging in existing construction in residential communities. So DC fast charging we see as a tremendous opportunity to extend the benefits of EV ownership to apartment and condo dwellers. And so the next steps here are to express your interest to me directly by this Friday, December 6th, and please send me an email, and in the subject line just express that it's Green Parking Council fast charging or something like that, so I know what it is. And it'd be great if you could outline some of the basics of what you'd like to do. If these are projects that are shovel ready, if they're projects that you are interested in developing, we'd be happy to explore those with you. And so we'll take a look at these projects. We'll get in touch with you between the 9th and the 11th. So we're looking to move fairly quickly and have these projects, be able to clearly identify a plan to make sure you're able to take advantage of the funding and hardware donations that we're making available and have your projects completed by March 31st. And I won't go over all these frequently asked questions in great detail, but basically we are supporting the CHAdeMO standard, which charges the Nissan Leaf, the Mitsubishi vehicles, some other vehicles as well. The Tesla models, I think just the Model S, but perhaps the Roadster as well, will be able to charge on the CHAdeMO with an adapter that should be made available sometime in December. We are also supporting SAE combo units, so dual units should be available sometime in the next quarter. We will not be able, unfortunately, to support SAE combo only units, as these must at least have a CHAdeMO connector. Next slide, please. And there are a lot of nuances to the equipment that's available. There's a lot of questions around networking, point-of-sale devices, and the like, and we can get into that in the Q&A if anyone has any questions about that. So we'll keep it general, or I'll keep it general with my presentation, and I look forward to your questions.
All right, great. We are going to hopefully unmute everybody. Trevor, Gretchen, are you doing that?
The conference has been unmuted.
All right. Everybody should be able to speak up now. This is somewhat of an experiment for us. We usually have people type their questions in. And I'm going to go back to David's slide with his contact information. So that, there we go. So that's up for folks while we're talking. Elizabeth has already raised, why wasn't Philadelphia included in the list? I'll tell you, sort of jointly, we looked at some of the top markets where there was expected to be a significant interest in electric vehicles, but we really are open. I think GPC clearly has a presence in Philadelphia, and I think David has expressed Nissan's interest in working other markets. We thought it made sense to start with a small group to focus on because it just helped us target our resources. But David, we're open to other considerations, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We're open to basically any geographic market as long as it makes sense for us. So definitely Philadelphia is aligned with the Nissan Leaf and what we see. So for sure we'll include Philadelphia.
Thanks.
Some folks have sent in some questions, but why don't you just go ahead and try and raise them. I know you can't see each other, but just try to be mindful and raise your question. We really want to try and have this as a conversation.
I'll just send an email that this whole process is in progress. Yeah, so I'm going to see if I can.
Want me to call on you? How about Alexandra?
So what's the envisioned ownership structure of the equipment once it's installed? And do you see kind of Nissan owning all of the charging revenues, or have you thought through a revenue model?
That's a great question. Something I didn't bring up in the presentation is Nissan does have its own equipment that it manufactures, but it's working with any and all equipment and manufacturers that have units that have CHAdeMO and dual units that have CHAdeMO and SAE combo. So that being said, we are not interested in owning the units, but we can help you identify business models or ownership structures that would make sense for you. For example, you could own the infrastructure and outsource the O&M. You could completely outsource the installation, ownership, and O&M of the unit. It depends kind of where you are in the United States, the stage of sort of the maturity of your market. Some geographic markets have different companies that are active in that market. For example, in California, NRG is very active in developing infrastructure that is wholly owned by that company. So it will pay for the installation, it will pay for the units, and it will cover the O&M. So basically at no cost to the site host. All that is required by the site is basically an in-kind donation of parking spaces. So that's one model. But NRG isn't operating in all states or all cities, so we kind of have to look at it on a market-by-market basis.
And part of Nissan and GPC's interest here is trying to figure out what models work in the states. So there really is an openness to being flexible and trying to figure out how to get it done.
Great,
is that helpful, Alexandra?
Yes, very helpful. Thank you.
Okay. Dan, you want to go next? Somebody's in their car. How about Matt Simon? You want to go next?
Yeah. Hi,
okay.
Mark Simon here. The question I have is someone going to assist the parking council in sort of understanding the most efficient way to integrate a fast charger to minimize the demand charges and other aspects of putting in a fast charger in a parking facility?
I'll start with that, and you can pick it up, David. I think Watson Collins is on the line. Watson is a Green Parking Council board member, works for Northeast Utilities, and has thought a lot about that. And I asked him to make sure he was on the call because that's an important question.
Hi, Watson.
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Good.
So we are definitely committed to working with people and figuring out the demand charge issue and how to make this happen in a good way. That's the short answer. David, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure. I mean, I'd say the demand charge issue is only an issue in some utility territories for some cases. I don't think it's an issue for everyone. So we're definitely committed to working with everybody on trying to figure out the best possible rate structures and even equipment for minimizing demand charges. So in some cases, we're installing 20 kilowatt equipment because that's below the demand charge threshold on a certain rate within a particular utility territory, so that works. So no demand charges, and it's great because it's fast charging at 20 kilowatts. In other cases, we're happy doing 50 kilowatts because the demand charge threshold doesn't happen until 100 kilowatts, and so there's nothing to worry about, and we just go forward from there. In other cases, it's a bit more complicated, and we have to look at what the site load is and what the impact would be. So it's not an easy question to answer, but again, it's just based on the local characteristics, and we're more than happy to dig into the details with you.
Watson, you want to add anything?
Yeah, no, I think those answers are great because there is in some cases it may not be an issue, and especially if it's on a property that has a lot of other activity going on there. This might just blend in and not impact the demand levels. So again, it's probably a case by case basis. Unfortunately, there's no quick answer there, but I think all the utilities would be, you could reach out to me or working through the Nissan folks to make sure you get contact with your local utility if you just want to understand what those issues are too.
Yeah, and I should just mention, I mean, Nissan has excellent relationships with all the large utilities and some of the large municipal utilities across the U.S., so feel free to work through us, and we can usually get an answer for you pretty quickly.
Okay, Dan Shanahan, did you get on, or do you want me to ask your questions?
Paul, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering, I just wanted to clarify if Nissan is providing the funding for the equipment and the installation, the infrastructure, or is that is the infrastructure the 480 three-phase, et cetera, that's required. Is that going to be on the site? Is that going to be on the site hosts?
So you mentioned 480. So you're talking about required input power?
Yes.
Input voltage? So most of the equipment that we have or that we work with it's either 480 volts AC three-phase or 208 volt AC three-phase. And then on the funding and equipment, it could be just funding, it could be just equipment, or it could be some mix of both. We are just going to evaluate each opportunity on a case-by-case basis and see what's necessary.
Okay. Could you repeat the first part of your response? You're just breaking up a little bit, David. Sorry about that.
Am I? I apologize.
Yeah, just on the configuration of the chargers.
Sure. So the equipment we have is either, that we work with anyway, is 480 volts three-phase AC or 208 volt three-phase AC.
Okay. All right. Great. And is it
part
right
of the reason we're asking for a showing of interest by Friday is so that Nissan can assess its resources, the level of interest, and we know the time frame is quick, and it helps them figure out sort of where the best place is to be investing their resources, which makes a lot of sense to me.
Okay. Yeah. And will Nissan fund the purchase of other manufacturers of DC equipment if they have CHAdeMO and or the SAE combo?
Yeah, we're happy to work with, whichever manufacturers you're interested in working with. We just have to make sure that the equipment is, we'd like it to be UL listed at the very least, and we just need to make sure that it's compatible with charging Nissan Leafs. Because in many cases, new equipment comes to market and it may not be designed to the CHAdeMO spec. We just need to make sure that it can charge Nissan Leafs.
Okay, great.
Other questions or comments?
I have a question. Is there any kind of preference for whether or not these spaces are publicly accessible for multifamily residences and some commercial concerns? There might be restricted access. Is that a problem?
Sure. I think that's a great question. It really depends on scale. So if it's a large community or if it's a large workplace and we're talking about thousands of employees, for example, we recently donated a fast charger to a campus that had 11,000 employees. We have no problems making that accessible only to the employees. But if it's smaller, really the default, and this is what we would expect in most cases, really the exception is not publicly accessible. So the rule is we prefer it to be publicly accessible. And that means accessible to the general public. If there's a gate, that's okay. If it's a paid parking area, that's okay. But if you have any exceptions to that, we would definitely consider supporting the project. It's just a matter of scale and perhaps profile. If it's a high-profile location, we consider supporting that.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? All right. Well, we'll get out the information from this call to the folks who both participated, and I think there were about 28 people got on the call, just so you know. Thank you for doing that. We just announced this yesterday. We're acting quickly. There were about another 10 or 15 or so who did register and didn't make it, but we'll make sure that they get information too, and we look forward to working with you. David, you want to add anything?
No, except that we're very excited to have joined the Green Parking Council, and we're definitely excited to be engaging immediately with this program. So we look forward to a healthy number of responses by Friday, and to a continued partnership with the Green Parking Council as we move forward beyond this project.